Welcome to Aragami, a game that you haven't played, and you should go play. Go play this game. Did you read the title of the video? You should play Aragami. Go play it. It's like $20 on Steam. Seriously, you don't have an excuse. Go play this game. All right, fine. I'll do an actual review so that way, you'll understand why I love this game so much and you'll understand why you need to go play it. Now, this review may seem unprompted because why are you talking about this indie game from 2016? You talked about it in your top 10 games of all time video, and now you're giving it a full review on the channel. And the reason is honestly very simple. I went back and I replayed the whole thing while I was sick with COVID and dying, and I was like, holy shit, this game is even better than I remember it being. And then I knew I had to review it. There was no choice. As for the review this time around, I've actually decided to go out and actually write a script, which is something I normally don't do, and I'm going to be referencing that script throughout the video, so if the video sounds kind of weird compared to how my videos normally are, it's because I'm trying to awkwardly read off a script, which I don't normally do. I just figured I'd get that out of the way before anyone mentions that the video sounds stilted or weird. Now, in terms of how the review is going to be laid out, it's going to be relatively simple. I have 3 sections I want to cover: gameplay, presentation and art direction, as well as the story. So I'm going to start off with, in my opinion, the most important part of the game, and that's the gameplay. Aragami is a stealth game through and through. You're not going to be able to brute force encounters without burning a ton of resources and having a lot of the powers unlocked, something that you won't really be able to do until New Game Plus. I have to get this out of the way as quickly as possible because if you do not like stealth games, then no matter how much I recommend you this game, you're not going to like it. Unlike a lot of the other games that I've talked about that are stealth games, you can't brute force things without stealth. You have to stealth, and the whole game is stealth. Now, as for the game itself, it's built on the pillars of sneaking and using shadows. Your titular character, the Aragami, is a shadow essence user, and they have 3 innate skills available to them: the ability to be nearly invisible while concealed in shadow, the ability to teleport to shadows, and the ability to create shadows on unlit surfaces. Using the teleport, shadow creation, or standing in a light source will all drain your shadow essence, which you can refill by entering shadows once again. Now, you can clear the entirety of Aragami with just those abilities that I mentioned, but you won't have to since the game has other powers that you can unlock. Now, in terms of the powers, there is a part of unlocking powers that is somewhat questionable. The only way to unlock new passive and active abilities is through skill points, and these skill points can only be acquired in the form of collectible scrolls. The issue is that these scrolls are only able to be identified via an unlock that you need skill points themselves to get. The game effectively forces you to unlock this ability first before you can start using any of the interesting abilities or things that will help you during minute-to-minute gameplay. I think the game could have heavily benefited from starting you off with the ability to locate scrolls, as at the start of the game, if you want to find skill points, you just have to wander around and hope you get lucky. I mean, obviously you can use intuition, like if there's a path that breaks away from the normal straightforward path, there's probably a scroll there, but even still, in order to unlock every single power in the game, you need to get every scroll, and that effectively forces you to unlock the Finding Scrolls ability right at the start. As for the powers themselves, there are 6 active abilities as well as some skills that have unlimited uses. The active abilities include Kage, which refills your shadow essence and makes you invisible and can be upgraded to make you silent while it's active. Sakaku, which summons a decoy to distract your enemies and can be upgraded to blind enemies that approach it. Banmoku, which allows you to see all nearby enemies through walls. The Kunai, which can take out enemies from range with an upgrade that makes it silent. Kurosuna, which will blind nearby targets, boasting an upgrade that allows it to be used at a distance, and Shinin, an activatable black hole that deletes anyone near it. Said black hole can be upgraded to be placeable on unsuspecting victims and detonated at will. Now, all of these powers have 2 charges each, which can be refilled at pre-placed shrines around the missions, or via Shadow Kill, a later upgrade which allows you to hold the kill button, and if successful, will pull the opponent into the Shadow Realm, as well as refill a single charge of your selected ability. Now, the abilities are incredibly fun to use, if a little broken at times. What I'm about to say can ruin the whole game, so skip ahead like 15 seconds if you don't want that. Most of the game can be entirely cheesed by chaining together Kage with Shadow Kills. Once you get these two abilities, you can just go through the whole game, turn yourself invisible, kill someone with the Shadow Kill, and even if you kill somebody right in front of their friends, they won't detect you. And because Shadow Kill leaves no body, and because it refills the Kage that you just used, it can be looped infinitely. Not exactly fair, but most aren't going to figure this out until long after they finish the game, or never at all. As for the difficulty of the game, I felt like most of the encounters on hard were balanced well, and that's the difficulty that I'd suggest playing on. The only time I felt that the game was directly unfair is during the second to last mission where you're put up against Sora. Sora can see you regardless of whether or not you're invisible, so you need to move from cover to cover in order to get closer to her. There's also a thunderstorm going on which will periodically drain your shadow essence and delete shadows. These on their own aren't the problem. The issue is this section near the top. If you go this way, around to the right, at least on hard, you die. Every single time. She can see directly down the cliff and she'll shoot you on your way up before she decides to leave and you have some cover. You have no choice but to take the path that seems like it won't get you closer to Sora. Why? Why even have the second path if you can't use it? The rest of the mission I really liked. The ever-present threat of Sora isn't something you've had to deal with until now, and the thunderstorm can really screw you over if you're not paying attention. It adds fair challenge, but this first area just seems nothing short of sadistic. The funny part is, the final battle with Yamiko is a joke. So I guess they wanted this to be the final real challenge? I don't know. Overall, the gameplay is fun, and that's really what matters. As for replayability, that depends entirely on how much you enjoy the game, because the game has replayability for those that are looking for it. The game is a scoring system that tracks things like time, enemies killed, bodies found, etc. The scoring system gives you a ranking at the end of the mission, with S rank being the highest. Not only does it have mission rankings, but it also has 3 different medals you can earn. One for not being detected at all, one for killing every enemy in the level, and one for killing no enemies in the level. There are skins as well as achievements tied to obtaining all 3 of these medals on every mission, which adds to loads of replayability if these are things that you're interested in doing. Now, the one thing that I can't really talk about in terms of gameplay is the co-op, because while I did play this game on co-op on 2 separate occasions, it's been a really long time since I've done that, so I can't speak to how good it is. What I can say is that any game with co-op is probably going to be more fun with friends, and while I've played almost exclusively by myself for most of the time that I've played, I still think that it's worth playing co-op if you want to get a friend involved. That's pretty much everything that I have to say about the gameplay though, so let's move over to the presentation and the art direction. Now, I just want to make something clear right off the bat, and that's that I'll usually avoid talking about art and all this kind of artsy stuff because I'm not an artist and art is subjective, but I'd be hard-pressed not to talk about the design of Aragami. To be blunt, the art direction is phenomenal, and the whole game benefits from the game's shadow aesthetic. All of the menus appear to be fading in and out of view just like your character, and have very few real defined edges. In terms of the game's UI, well, there isn't one. And that's what's brilliant. During the vast majority of your gameplay, the only things on screen are your crosshair and the game. All of the important UI for the game is presented on the back of your character itself. It's ever present, but doesn't take up any more of the screen. Your currently equipped power, how many charges it has, as well as how much shadow essence you have, and whether or not you're concealed in shadows, is all displayed on the back of your character at all times. The real attention to detail here comes in during the cutscenes. None of the cutscenes are masterpieces by any rights, but one thing that the cutscenes always do is keep track of the state of your character. Things like whether or not Aragami is in shadow, or how many powers you had left at the time of entering the cutscene, always carry over into the cutscene itself. And it's just one of those things that so easily could have been overlooked, but wasn't. Aragami is one of those games where you can hardly even tell that the game is from 2016 because the art style itself is timeless. It may not look hyper-realistic, but it will always have the style that it retains from when it was created. Last but not least, in terms of Aragami, we need to talk story. I am going to be talking a bunch of spoilers here, and I will have timestamps in the video, so if you don't want spoilers, skip through this section, because I'm going to be spoiling the whole thing. Aragami starts off with your player character, the Aragami, coming into being. You're quickly tasked by Yamiko, your summoner and companion, with collecting talismans, which Yamiko will be able to use to free herself as well as the Shadow Empress, an extremely powerful being who, according to Yamiko, will free the land from the oppression of the Kaiho Light Adepts. You have to retrieve all the talismans before sunrise, or your body will dissolve. Throughout the game, you're treated with visions of Yamiko's life, as well as visions from an unknown light adept. After your fight with Hikaru, the first of 2 bosses in the game, he exclaims that freeing the Shadow Empress Yamiko will cause destruction on a massive scale, revealing Yamiko as the Empress, as well as causing both you and your character to start questioning your actions. This all comes to a head when you kill Kaiho's current general, Sora. After stabbing her and coming into physical contact, your character remembers who he truly is. You are Ryo, a Kaiho general who sacrificed himself in order to trap Yamiko's spirit. Yamiko used her powers to bring you back to life in order to do her bidding, and you've been blindly murdering your previous friends and comrades all night. Yamiko reveals her true form as the Shadow Empress and decides to toy with you until sunrise, where you'll be obliterated. After a fight where Ryo seems to have the advantage, Yamiko goes full power and appears to kill Ryo. But when the fog clears, Ryo isn't dead, and instead, there's a dragon that can be seen shielding him. The shield technique is a technique used by the late Ryota, a friend of Yamiko's. Backed into a corner, Ryo calls upon his previous life's light essence powers and gains the upper hand. Before striking Yamiko down, Ryo laments on the fact that all these people had to die in an endless cycle of revenge, and he wishes things could have gone differently. Yamiko quietly agrees in their final moments, and in an explosion of light, Yamiko and Ryo are no more, with only Ryo's sword and Yamiko's doll remaining on the Shadow Empress's throne. Now that's the extremely simplified version of Aragami's story. That's the impression that you'll get if you're not really paying attention like I was when I played this game in 2017 and just fly through the game. The real depth of Aragami's story, though, is found in the endless cycle of revenge and how atrocities committed by one faction can't necessarily excuse atrocities committed by another. We learn over the course of the series that Yamiko's parents are murdered by a duo of light adepts. Yamiko's father, who was murdered, was a good friend of Hyo, a future father figure for Yamiko. The pain and hatred caused by these 2 light adepts causes Hyo to instate Yamiko as the leader of a new nation and use the power that they hold to eradicate all light adepts, peaceful or otherwise. This inadvertently leads to the creation of the Kaiho Light Adepts, who are your enemies in the game. The 4 leaders of the Kaiho hail from a peaceful arid village that was unjustly attacked in this crusade to destroy all Light Adepts. And Kaiho, built on the foundation of hatred for Shadow Adepts, presumably commits heinous acts in an attempt at revenge for them. The tragic part is that the vast majority of people that died in this war of hatred likely have no idea how any of this started. And the brilliant part is, neither do we. We don't know why the Light Adepts killed Yamiko's parents, and that's the whole point. The starting point for the hatred and who's right, who's wrong, who started it, none of that matters, because the important message to take away here is that regardless of who started the pain, unless one side decides enough is enough, the cycle of revenge is endless and is never going to stop. I think the most interesting part of Aragami's story, though, is your player character themselves, because while it may seem like you're just Ryo, you're also Ryo, Ryuta, and Yamiko's other friend, Orochi. A plot point that's very integral to the story of Aragami is the fact that Yamiko lost her two best friends, Ryota and Orochi, during a reconnaissance mission against the people who initially killed her parents. After witnessing the death of her two best friends, to the same people who killed her parents, Yamiko goes ballistic and levels an entire city. And that's how she becomes known as the Shadow Empress in the first place. The thing is, when you come back to life at the beginning of the game as Ryo, you're not just Ryo. You're left to infer, but never directly told, that the body that you're inhabiting is actually Ryuta's. You wear the same armor that he does in the cutscenes that he's present in, as well as you have the ability at the end of the game to use his technique to defend yourself. It's not just Ryuta though, you're also a part of Orochi, as the sword that you use is Orochi's sword. It's foreshadowing that's present right at the beginning of the game, as when you spawn right next to a tomb with dragons on it, which is Ryuta's call sign. And when you go to pick up your weapon, Orochi's sword, it's surrounded by snakes, Orochi's call sign. Not only that, but when you do your shadow kills in the game, there's two of them. One is a dragon, one is a snake. It's these little parts of Aragami storytelling that I think are the most powerful. And it's things that most people are probably gonna brush immediately past when just complaining that the story is mediocre and they wanna stab some people. But I think it's nothing short of poetic that effectively what happens in the story of Aragami is that Hyo, Ryuta, and Orochi all come together in order to finally force Yamiko to overcome the deaths of her friends and her parents and find peace, which she does by the end of the game, and it's present in that one final line. So that's it. That's everything I had to say about Aragami. It's a game that I hold close to my heart, so obviously I'm going to be extremely biased. And it's also one of the only true stealth games I've ever played. It doesn't have some sort of combat system if you mess up. You either kill the enemy in one hit, or they kill you in one hit. And that pure simplicity matters a lot here. A game of this caliber can be hard to come by these days, especially with all of the AAA releases and release it broken, fix it later mentalities. Something that unfortunately stemmed to the sequel of this game and made it not be able to hold up as well as the original. But regardless, seeing something so committed to truly just what it is refreshing. But I'm gonna stop beating around the bush here and score the game, because that's what you guys want me to do at the end of the video, right? I personally would give Aragami a 10 out of 10. Now let me make things clear. I don't think a 10 out of 10 makes a perfect game, because no game is truly going to be perfect. But for what it is, Aragami reaches the highest heights for me. Currently, I've put over 150 hours into this game, despite a playthrough of the game for this review on hard mode only being about 3 hours. The game on Steam runs for only $20, with the addition of the game's DLC running you $5 more. I didn't talk about the DLC in this review, but it's more Aragami, it's good, and if you guys want me to talk about the DLC in a separate video, I can, but there isn't a whole lot to talk about. Ignoring the DLC, just the game itself, it's a masterpiece in my eyes. None of the flaws that I have with the game hold it back from being incredibly enjoyable to play. The concepts used in gameplay are unique and executed to near perfection, and the story of betrayal and revenge, while not being conceptually new, is engaging enough to keep me invested and look into the backgrounds of everything that's going on. Overall, if you haven't played Aragami already, I could not recommend it more. The game is fun, the game is interesting, the game had me invested, and that, my friends, is why you should go play Aragami.